I get that in the comments about any video that I post about that topic, is that people don't see a problem because they still see a world being a very busy place. But the problem is essentially partially masked by the ballooning of the older population, because they are living like longer lives essentially. So they are still there, even though the underlying problem is rapidly sort of approaching us. So when will we actually see the decline of populations
Well,
that we are
let's
all aware
start
of?
globally. I mean, there's a big debate globally, and the United Nations is changing its view, but it could be as early as the 2080s or even possibly the 2060s. I mean, that's a kind of big demographic discussion. We're already seeing the population decline in many countries. So if you take countries where there are more deaths than births every year, and there's no net immigration, we'll have a declining population. Now, these are not minor countries. These are places like Russia, places like China, places like Japan. China and Japan culturally are not really equipped for mass immigration. They don't want it. China's not wealthy enough to attract it. So if you have more deaths every year than births, your population's declining and aging very rapidly. So big countries like China, Japan, and Russia. Germany is one of those countries where it has more deaths than births significantly, but there's immigration that keeps the population growing. The whole of the EU has significantly more deaths than births. The UK, we just had some data out last week that in England and Wales, there were 400 more births than deaths last year. So they've almost matched, but Scotland has about 4,000 more deaths than births. So Great Britain, and let's leave Northern Ireland out, Ireland slightly different, Great Britain is now in that zone where only immigration is affecting the population. Many countries in Eastern Europe have got rapidly aging populations, falling fertility, and more deaths than births. Somewhere like Bulgaria, I think very broadly, kind of already come down from sort of 8 or 9 million to 6 or 7 million. So some of the countries in the Balkans, which get probably too little coverage, are seeing not only rapid aging, but actually their population declining, villages emptying out. So it's kind of interesting theoretically to say, when will this hit the world? But you can just see it hitting country after countries. And we live nationally, we don't live globally. By which I mean, we vote in national elections, we have national tax systems, we have national governments with national debts and national health services, small NHS. So they obviously vary in different countries. But we live as nations, and it's no good saying to the Koreans, who are declining by 2/3 every cohort, this is not a problem because family sizes in the Democratic Republic of Congo are very large. So although we can wonder about what's happening at the global level, and it's interesting, it's actually what's happening nationally that is relevant. And some really big and important countries are either already in population decline or they would be absent mass immigration.
So the number 400, because I've read that last week, I think it was on Matthew Goodwin's Substack. I've got that figure from. But I can't remember whether that was taking immigration under account or not. Do you know that?
No, that's simply deaths versus births, and that's simply England and Wales. So forget that's absent immigration. So 400 in a country of 60 or 70 million, you could just say zero. I mean, forget it. 400 is irrelevant. So what basically is the case, and Matt did cover it, and I also did a Substack piece for Matt. I did a guest piece for him about this
a couple of weeks
weeks earlier. What's actually happening is, to all intents and purposes, you can say births and deaths in England and Wales are matching each other, and in Great Britain, deaths are slightly larger than births. It's interesting because the ONS, the last time I looked at the ONS projections, they thought there would be a very small positive margin of births over deaths in England and Wales, possibly in the UK as a whole, until the mid to late 2020s, or at least for a few more years. So I think the fall in the birth rate last year has kind of shocked everyone. We're through COVID. We have a reasonably predictable number of deaths each year. is actually slightly affected by the fact that life expectancy is not growing much in the UK. But that's slightly different. That's about how many more old people we have. But the fall in the birth rate has rather surprised people, and we've got there quicker. So that's totally what you can essentially say in the UK is we have matching births and deaths, which, by the way, means we're building in, regardless of what happens now, we are going to have a lot more deaths than births in 10 years' time. And just because the cohort of birth givers is falling and the cohort of people who are going to die is growing. So that's built in. And then, so we have kind of zero population growth, and then we have about 600,000 more people coming in than going out, and that gives us about 1% population growth.